Hey everyone, I'm Rahul Dureja from Workato, and today we'll be talking about how to get your AI agents from the promise that they have to actual real impact. So today, we'll be covering the fact that AI is definitely powerful, but there's something lacking. We'll talk about how orchestration is that silent force that really makes your AI agent smart, and then we'll close out with how Workato's point of view, how do we look at how Workato can make your AI agents a lot smarter. So, I bring this up everywhere, right? AI has been the term, for the past few years. Everybody has their own interpretation. Everybody thinks, AI in very different ways. But if you take a closer look, AI essentially is this layering of orchestration with agentic, right? You have these agents that can really help you perform these front-end tasks really well, where they can take actions for you, they can go ahead and write emails for you, but orchestration gives them that superpower where they essentially allow you to work on your enterprise applications. They allow you to perform actions as creating a new order or going ahead and adding a new employee to your company. So let's talk about where we are in the AI journey right now, right? So we know that AI is everywhere. There are companies who have onboarded AI agents. You see the Claudes, the Bedrocks, the Geminis everywhere. But what you see is that they are being primarily used for a lot of front-end activities, right? People are using their AI agents to essentially help them write emails, to help them find information. But what they're not really doing is acting upon your end applications. The main power or the main data lies in your end applications, the Salesforces, the SAPs, the Zendesk that you have. That's where your main data lies, but your AI is not really able to act upon those applications. So what's really missing, right? Your AI agents are smart. They have the ability to perform actions on your behalf, but why aren't they able to do so? And the answer to that is orchestration, right? So if you really try to look at any AI agent, or if you really try to look at any enterprise company who is looking to adopt AI agents, for them, four main things are of prime importance, right? They essentially want governed real-time access to their data. They want process orchestration. They essentially want a way to define roles and escalation paths, and they essentially want a continuous life cycle. And all of that are the powers that an orchestration engine can bring to you. Combining AI with orchestration gives you that combined power where your AI agents now can essentially act upon your data. They can go ahead and interact with your end applications, perform actions on your behalf. So if you have to create a new sales order or onboard a new employee, your agent is now empowered to do this with the ability to orchestrate. Now, why does it matter for agents, right? So orchestration allows you to connect your end applications. It allows application A to speak with application B, which essentially is very, very important for agents, right? So if agents have to perform something, they need to understand what application do I need to connect to, where do I extract my data from, where do I write data to. You want to implement guardrails, right? Security and trust are the number one things that every enterprise looks at, right? They want to make sure that if they have an AI agent that they're using to perform actions, it should be done in a secure and trustworthy manner. You should be able to use all forms of authentication that are available to essentially interact with end applications, and your AI agent should comply with those. This should enable collaboration, right? Now, the way we look at AI agents is as an assistant to an employee. It could help a salesperson bring up deals that have been dormant for a long time. It could help a customer service representative answer questions in a way which can solve customer issues a lot quicker. And your AI agent should be able to enable collaboration, and it should be able to hand over from a human to an agent anytime. And finally, leave a trace, right? You are having your agent interact with your end applications. You want to make sure that you're able to leave that paper trail of what's happening behind the scenes. And that's where orchestration comes in, right? So orchestration is your silent force. It's the force that's going to enable your agents to be a lot smarter. It's the force that's going to enable your agents to essentially act upon your end applications and make them more meaningful. Now, let's try and look at it from a business process perspective, right? Every single enterprise customer, right, they have multiple business processes. Now, these could be my order to cash, my procure to pay, or any other process that I have. And at the bottom layer is where I have all of my end applications. This is where my data resides. These are my systems of truth of data, which could be my SAPs, my Salesforce applications, or my other ERPs. On top of that, you have your connectivity fabric. This is how you essentially interact with these applications. Now, forward to today, you already have your agentic layer. You already have your agents that essentially are running, and you essentially want your agents to perform actions on your end applications. What's the missing link? It's the orchestration layer. The orchestration layer is the one that's going to allow interaction of your AI agents with your underlying applications, which also lets you enable this deep action layer where your agents can really perform actions on your data. They can go ahead and perform tasks based on what you're trying to do, right? They can mimic what a human can do. And that's where the real power lies. And that's the power that orchestration brings up. Now, a lot of customers have already built a lot of orchestrations, right? The whole idea of orchestrations and iPaaS is not new. And there are customers who may have already built hundreds of thousands of integrations. With AI in the mix, they don't really want to rebuild everything, right? They should be able to reuse what they've already built. And this is an example where an AI app they've onboarded can now interact with your pre-built integrations through MCP, right? And MCP is a great example where it can really enable your AI agents to become a lot smarter without having to put a lot of effort, because you already have built your orchestrations. You have made sure that all of your integrations that you have built, they're already using the right security protocols, they're interacting with the right applications, they're using the right accounts, and now you can put your AI agent through MCP, can essentially now interact with your end applications and perform those actions. Now, this is where I'd like to talk about Workato's approach, right? With Workato, our goal was to essentially help enable AI agents to be a lot smarter, for them to go ahead and interact with the end applications and to take actions on your behalf. Workato always started off as an orchestrate platform, and we use the power of our orchestrate platform to layer on agentic on top of it. With our agentic platform, it uses the underlying power of orchestrate to interact with our end applications, and it can allow you to have your AI agents now interact with those end applications through MCP. And this is where I'd like to introduce you to Workato 1. Now, if you talk to any director or any VP in any enterprise company, for them, these three facets are the most important for their AI adoption journey. They want access to the right knowledge, which means that they want access to their company documents. They want orchestration because they want to make sure that it can actually perform actions on a user's behalf. And the number one thing is trust, right? They want to make sure that all of this happens in a layer of governance and in a layer of security. And these are the three things which we kept in mind when designing Workato 1. So with Workato 1, as you can see here, right, with Workato 1, we started off as an orchestrate platform, which is iPaaS Plus, but then we layered on top our agentic platform, which essentially allows you to build your own agents or leverage Workato's enterprise MCP to go ahead and empower your existing agents to take advantage of your existing orchestrations. Now, you might ask me that, do I need to have Workato orchestrate to use Workato agentic? The answer to that would be no, right? Because you may have built your orchestrations in any language, in any software, and you would be able to use Workato's MCP to enable those orchestrations, to be used with your AI agents and interact with your end applications. And that's where, I add this another layer to my diagram earlier, does enterprise MCP, right? My enterprise MCP allows my AI agents, to essentially interact with my end applications, and now all of my deterministic processes can now be done in a non-deterministic way through the use of my AI agents. And that's where the power of MCP lies. And that's the power that Workato is essentially talking about, the power of Workato's enterprise MCP, which allows you to interact with these applications. Now, talking about our enterprise MCP, with our enterprise MCP, right, the idea was very simple. The idea was the fact that you should be able to use your existing orchestrate layer. You already have done a lot of work in connecting to your applications, right? You may have the ERPs, the CRMs that you've already connected to, and you essentially are going to use that to empower your agents. You already have agents that are performing all of your front-end tasks. How do you go from those agents who are just performing your front-end tasks to actually go ahead and perform actions on your applications? And that's where my MCP comes in. Now, Workato's Enterprise MCP takes into account, Workato's 12,000 plus connectors that allow you to interact with applications. It uses our pre-existing governance model to ensure that you're able to interact with your end applications in a secure way. You're able to essentially impersonate a user to go ahead and perform an action on your behalf. So if I am a support personnel who wants to go ahead and check the status of a request, the action can be performed on my behalf now, with Workato's Enterprise MCP. So essentially, imagine this, right? Imagine having your agent, be it a Claude, be it a ChatGPT, be it Bedrock, to go ahead and say, summarize my open sales pipeline. It can essentially go ahead and connect to my Salesforce instances, look at my gone call records, because I already have built those connectors, capture all of that data, and essentially present to me one unified view of what my sales pipeline is. Now, the opportunities with MCP are endless. Right? You can apply MCP in multiple different scenarios, right? You can take your existing business processes, for which you already have the integrations, expose them via MCP to your AI agents. And your AI agents are now going to help you perform that. What that does, it really helps adoption at scale. Earlier, if you had to perform a business process, you essentially would have to go ahead and understand what are your APIs available, what are your services available, and then somebody would have to stretch that through in a very deterministic manner. Now with MCP, all of that is done through an AI agent. MCP goes ahead and discovers those APIs, discovers those applications, and goes ahead and performs that action for you. And that's where the power of MCP lies. Now, a lot of times I get asked this question that, every vendor is talking about MCP servers, right? We have, a lot of CRM applications, ERP applications who essentially have their own MCP servers. Why would you essentially choose Workato's Enterprise MCP over these vendor-specific MCP servers? Number one, right? It all goes back to the whole idea of tool proliferation, right? Back in the days, when this whole idea of orchestration started, right? Every single company had their own tool, right? SAP had their own integration tool, Oracle had their own integration tool, and all of these tools required you to have a separate level of skill for each tool. It also required you to have separate governance models, and essentially you need to have a separate set of people who essentially were going ahead and managing these tools. Now, what that does, now with MCP as well, it's the same thing, right? Every vendor is going to have its own MCP tool, which is going to have its own security model, its own governance model, which gets us to the same point which we were about 20 years ago. We get to a point where there's, again, tool proliferation. In this case, it's MCP proliferation, which makes your life even harder. But with something like Workato's Enterprise MCP, where you can essentially interact with all of the applications that you have through a single unified layer, it allows you to accelerate your value because you're essentially building out an MCP server, which is exposed to your agents, which follows a security protocol that you have built out. You do not really need to rely on the security protocols that you have from your vendor-specific MCPs, and it essentially is powered by Workato One, right? Our entire connectivity landscape really helps you empower your entire MCP adoption. And that's where I say that, without an enterprise MCP, you're not orchestrating, you're actually outsourcing control to every vendor in your stack. Because you essentially are at the mercy of every vendor that has their own MCP server to adapt to their standards and adapt to their guidelines. And that's where Workato's Enterprise MCP becomes very, very important. Finally, right, we talked a lot about MCP, but one thing that's core to MCP and to AI, and for AI to be smarter, is the orchestration layer. The orchestration layer needs to be powerful, needs to be adaptable, which in a sense allows you to go ahead and build your integrations in a manner which are secure, governed, and scalable. And that's where Workato's enterprise-grade abilities come out of the box, right? You are able to essentially have a completely managed offering. You are essentially able to deploy your applications in an always-on model. We provide to you zero downtime upgrades, we provide to you log and audit streaming. At the same time, you can have your orchestrations that can listen to your applications in multiple ways, right? I can listen to a change in an object inside of Salesforce, I can listen to a new file added to an S3 bucket, and all of that can be done through Workato. So essentially, the idea is that in this agentic journey, because AI agents are the future, but orchestration still remains true. You need to partner with a platform that can really help to make your orchestrations faster, secure, and more enterprise grade. And that's where Workato comes in. And finally, I would recommend all of you to come by our booth 1085. We have multiple live demonstrations available that will help us showcase our orchestrated and agentic platform, show you the power of Workato's enterprise MCP, and essentially give you a flavor of what Workato can do for your business. Thank you.